Hi, everyone in the chat. Thanks for saying hello and good morning. Okay, so the new peer managers challenge, which is delegation. So I've been with Share. I want to mention I've been with Share for almost 3 years now, and supervising a team of people who were my peers before becoming their supervisor was, I would say, one of the most challenging moments of all of the work that I've done here. It wasn't a really easy transition to make, and I hope to share some of that experience with you through this presentation. As that sort of new manager who was really worried about everything and feared just doing a really bad job, this presentation pulls from some of those experiences of my own, but also those of other new managers who I've spoken with and who are willing to share some of their experiences within the peer workforce. So, again, it's a really unique field to be in, but I think especially it's a really unique position to be in as someone whose work value comes from being at the same level as others, right? While simultaneously having to be at a leadership level on the career ladder. So it's an interesting conversation. So can everyone see this screen fully? Seeing nods. Oh, awesome. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today are just some key challenges faced by new managers. We're going to define and introduce the art of delegation, and sort of what that looks like. Benefits and advantages, of course, of delegation. I'd love to hear how maybe delegation has benefited you and your team in the past or currently. We'll look at some considerations to make when delegating, and of course, suggested steps for effective delegation. And we're also going to look at a role play that I sort of created. And we're also going to just do a quick exercise that's kind of fun, and it kind of gets us thinking about what we need to consider when we're delegating a task, and especially dependent on what that task is. So and then we'll look at tools and a couple tools and techniques for empowering peers through delegation, which is so important in my opinion. And then we'll wrap up with just a Q&A if we have time for that. Of course, you're welcome to ask questions throughout it. Although if you can save them for the end, I think that'll help ensure us that we get through the presentation. So hopefully we have some new managers here who may want to share some of their experiences. I would honestly love to hear other people's experiences outside of just my own and my peers. So, okay. So to begin, becoming a new supervisor in any field is a difficult thing, right? So to do this from a peer role can be even more complex because we place so much value in being at a peer level with all of our colleagues, right? So I want to look at some of those specific challenges that peers who are transitioning into that supervisor role almost always face. One challenge of this transition is 100% identity shift, from being a peer supporter to a managerial figure, right? So with this challenge, the significant change in work roles is really sudden, right? And transformations like this might be difficult on new managers, especially in our line of work. I would say, both managers and colleagues might struggle to acknowledge and accept this new identity at first, and it can bring on feelings of unworthiness and self-doubt. I certainly felt some of that whenever I first was hired or first promoted. I was in total shock, and I wonder why I couldn't accept that, right? Some people question their ability to perform in their new role and might even experience a little bit of imposter syndrome, which is a person who's doubting their abilities, maybe feeling like a fraud, even though they're successful and capable and doing a great job. So this is a very real challenge. Another common one is the shift in relationships with coworkers. Man, this is a big one. And this comes with several challenges of its own. Staff feel negatively about the transition. They aren't receptive to the new leadership, so they might resist authority. Dynamics of new relationships can, of course, strain old ones. Former peer relationships might lead to implicit bias from the new manager. At the same time, former work friends of the new manager might expect to be favored, right, over other staff. So that can always be an issue. And managers might also struggle to let go of their former peer relationships, either intentionally or unintentionally, right? Making it difficult to be a leader and to supervise those people. So, and then I would say one of the largest challenges new managers face in this transition is having to develop the new skills that it takes to be a leader, right? Things like team management, conflict resolution, decision making, and then of course the one that we are really emphasizing today, which is delegation, right? So hopefully we're going to get a little bit more in depth about the challenge and skill of delegation. So, all right. So what exactly is delegation? I'm sorry if I'm missing some people's questions in the chat. I did just catch this last one. I do believe we make the PowerPoints available later on our, along with the recording of this. At least I would love to. I'll definitely bring it. I think we did in our last conference, but I'll double check to answer AK's question. Okay, so what is delegation? Delegation is the transfer of responsibility for specific tasks from one person to another, along with the appropriate authority and the appropriate accountability. It occurs when a supervisor or manager assigns and entrusts specific tasks to their team members or to those less senior than oneself. I don't really like the way that I don't like the sound of that, but it's what the definition said, so I added it. Which is, again, back to some of the challenges of being a supervisor. All managers and team leaders need to decide what work they should do themselves and also what should be done by others. This means letting go of the assignments and tasks that you usually do and allowing someone else to get them done. Many people think that delegation is really as simple as handing over assignments to people on their team, right? I mean, I think of the word delegate, and that's the first thing I think of is like, oh, yeah, let me give these people some assignments, right? But at the same time, other people consider this to be sort of an art that they have to carefully craft and consider many things in order to yield the most superior results for their team, their program, and their organizations. Truthfully, I think that there's some complexity to delegation, but there can also be some simplicity to it, at least from what I've seen, when managers are able to listen to their staff and communicate effectively and pay attention to the details. So let's explore what that art of delegation kind of looks like. And here's that word balance again that I feel I mentioned earlier. These are just some of the things that some of the necessary skills that it may take to master delegation. So balance is such a big word, big and a big one in this topic of conversation. It requires balance of a lot of different things, responsibilities, resources, and trust. All of these things, you have to just find the perfect balance. Strategic decision making is a skill we mentioned earlier that can be a challenge for new managers to learn. Asking things like, who's the best person to give this task to? What resources are going to work best for this task? Delegation requires empowerment, empowering your staff to take ownership of tasks to foster autonomy, which is, their ability to work independently. And then, of course, flexibility and adaptability are a large part of delegation, as many things change, right? Circumstances change, as well as strategies, priorities change, especially just at the drop of a hat. That happens all the time. Each individual also has different capabilities, right? Which can also change and develop over time. So as you hire new staff, you want to adapt to and be flexible around their capabilities so that you can delegate tasks effectively and figure out, what's going to be the most effective. And just continued on to this, like all things, right? Communication is imperative to delegation. Specifically clear communication, from what I've seen, and concise communication. New managers want to be able to convey expectations, instructions, of course, and feedback is always wonderful. New managers should mentor their staff. It calls for mentorship sometimes, right? They want to mentor their staff in ways that's going to enhance their skills, enhance their growth, and is going to lead to just enhanced delegation amongst the whole team. And then accountability would be another one. Accountability as a manager means that you hold the responsibility for your role as the manager, overseeing and directing the delegation of tasks. And of course, delegation requires creativity, right? A really important question to ask when delegating is, how do you consider the skills? How do you consider the gifts of all of your team members? You want to find creative and innovative ways to delegate tasks that include and expand on your staff's strengths and their talents within the process of getting all of this work done. How can we make it benefit and better serve the people who are on your team? Okay, so I want to look at levels of delegation really quick. This chart was given to me specifically from a coach that I had whenever I became a new manager. So, which is actually something that they do here at Share for people who become new managers, because it can be just such a difficult thing to navigate. So, if your organizations don't do that, or that sounds like something that's of interest, I would highly recommend exploring finding a coach for new managers. I learned so much about time management and delegation from my coach, who I adore and just love to work with. So she provided me with this little chart that helped me. I mean, I'm not even kidding, y'all. Severely helped me delegate to my team. I wasn't delegating at all and kind of overwhelming myself and experiencing burnout. So, I more than anyone probably understand how important this is. So I want to examine some levels of autonomy and how we can use it to determine the level of delegation that might be needed for a staff member on your team. New managers have to assess their staff members' autonomy, right? Which is a person's capacity to work independently, right? Or to not. And hopefully to be able to make decisions related to their work responsibilities without their managers necessarily influencing their decisions, or really their processes to accomplishing those tasks, right? So I want to look at each level together, starting from number one, a person with low autonomy. A supervisor will ask the person to follow their direction and report the results immediately. This is a level of delegation that's often, used where it's often where new hires begin, right? It's certainly where I began when I first started. My supervisor really had to, just check out what I was doing. I had to follow them directly. I really had no clue what I was doing. And so that's kind of where I started. I didn't, hold a lot of autonomy at work just yet. And more experienced staff obviously usually are higher on the scale. Now, people don't just stay at level 1, right? It's possible to move up this ladder by a manager working with their staff and kind of helping them achieve, each step. How can we help somebody no longer need to just follow my direction and report results to me, but to look into the situation themselves and report the facts to me by a specific date, and then give them direction at that point, right? So it's kind of this gradual process that is really helpful. In my experience, it has been really helpful. Sometimes you kind of have to like maneuver certain parts of, how that person operates, or, you just have to consider how that person works. And it's not exactly just like, oh, immediately they're, going to move up to the next step. You might have to kind of, do some trial and errors and figure out, what actually works for your staff. So as we move up each level, I want to encourage you all to think about which one you find yourself delegating at the most. Who do you delegate, the most to? And when you delegate, which level are you usually delegating to them at? And also, I want you all to also consider what level does your supervisor choose to delegate when it comes to delegating tasks to you. So these are things I want you to consider, right? So number 3 on the ladder is a manager asks, look into the situation and propose at least 2 solutions to me. Discuss those with me before acting on my approval. The next one would be look into the situation, propose solutions, and recommend one, right? Discuss it with me for my approval before acting. Level 5 would be look into the situation and propose a solution to me. You decide and take action if you haven't heard back from me by whatever date. And the highest level of autonomy and of delegation is you've handled this kind of situation before successfully. Do what you think needs doing, report back to me on a routine basis, if at all, right? There's a lot of autonomy there, right? It says, I really like that last bit where it says, if at all. So, clearly this staff member would have a lot of freedom in making decisions on their own, which is really great, right? That's going to really build somebody's skills. If they can get to level 6, y'all, they're really going to figure out how to lead a team themselves at that point, which is great, right? We want everybody to be able to grow and, benefit the companies that we work for in, the maximum way. So I've asked myself many questions like, how much guidance and support does this person need to successfully complete this said task, right? Do I see them accomplish more and operate better under like my direct supervision, essentially micromanaging a bit, in my opinion? Or do I see them capable of coming up with solutions, maybe, but they struggle to make one decision, or do I notice that they're capable of handling problems and tasks on their own without really even needing any guidance from me at all? Truthfully, a manager can choose to delegate at any of these levels. So ultimately, it depends on the person as well as the responsibility, right? No matter which level you select, definitely is always important that you, as their manager, provide the appropriate level of guidance and support and training for them. By you doing your part as a supervisor, your staff is going to be more likely to grow and gradually become more autonomous when it comes to their work responsibilities. So in my opinion, this is really what effective delegation can look like, right? So what are some of the benefits behind effective delegation? Enhanced team dynamics, skill development, time management, increased productivity, all of these things, right? I don't think I listed all of them, but I'm curious to hear from y'all. In what ways has delegating to your team, or maybe your supervisor delegating to you, been beneficial? What has, what have you like clearly seen be like the greatest benefit to delegation on your team? You can jump in if you'd like, or you can raise your hand. You're welcome to do either.
I have something.
Yeah,
Hi.
go ahead. Hi.
So one of the things that I think worked really well for me with most of my supervisors over the years is, like you said, I had a high level of fidelity. I had to make decisions. They would just say, she works well alone. They didn't hover over me or micromanage me. They just said, okay, good job, and they would leave the decision making to me. Early on, they would say, sometimes they would give me directions, but then not too long after that, they would say, okay, well, what do you think? And then they would let that be what, and I was very productive, and I
Mhm.
guess I was developing. I didn't realize that I was, um, and I had a sense of ownership and pride with my work from
Oh,
that.
love that. Love that for you. Yeah, what a great benefit, right? Like to feel I mean, especially in this field of work, like feeling like I'm really proud of this work is really great. It really like I very much relate to you. Like it made me feel like I could do this forever. Like I want to keep doing this. And this can be a hard field to be in, right? People get burnt out. But yeah, that's definitely a huge benefit. Thank you for sharing. That's awesome.
You're
Good for
welcome.
you also. John, go ahead.
Thank you. I guess just as an example, our team's supervisor, who is conveniently in this call, either, she has done a great job of utilizing each. We're all peers on our team, and we all have like a very unique set of skills and strengths, and then of course lack thereof. We all have things that we excel at and things that we're not so great at. So it's just making the most of that, by doing things like developing different positions to utilize those things, and opening up space for just clear communication. I know for us working from home, it can be super hard. Just
Hmm.
general, when you're in an office, you see each other, you communicate more, there's just more of a general understanding of where people are at. So creating opportunities like we just had our team leads retreat last week, where we were able to sit down and talk those things out, and therefore as a team of leads, delegate things in ways that make sense.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Thank you, John. Yeah, you touched on something that is super important when it comes to delegation, which is highlighting people's strengths, right? Like bringing that into I think that's what makes it like such an art. Some people are like, delegation is simple. You just give it to whoever, and sure, I used to think that way too, but when I figured out like, yes, my people have different strengths and then they don't, in some places, other people might excel better on Microsoft, right? Um, and that's okay, right? So that means I can delegate to this person who may not be so good so that they can get better. Or, it depending on the task, right? Like if I need something quick, I'm going to use the person who's really good on Excel. Yeah, that's really great. Um, I see there's a couple people in the chat. Nidria said motivational tool, morale boost, 100%. It's a huge benefit. Time management and empowerment for staff. Love that. Oh my goodness. And Emily says, thanks, John. Always improving this aspect of our team dynamics. For me, delegation has prevented my own burnout and overwhelm. Wow, I feel that, Emily, so much. Thank you for sharing that. Let's see. I see your hand up. I'm not sure how to pronounce your name, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. Is it Madup?
Madupe,
Madupe. Okay, go ahead.
thank
Thank you
you.
for sharing.
Thank you. Kind of along the lines of what people have said, but being a peer itself involves self-identification. Now, being able to self-identify, sometimes we undersell ourselves. And so it takes a delegated task for you to acknowledge and self-identify the skills that are innate. Somebody else sees the potential in you, and through delegation is helping you to coax out that skill, fine tune it, and sometimes bring it to your awareness that you have that skill. So I found that instructive leading my team, where people self-identify as shy, and then you delegate a task that puts them in the center of stuff, and then they realize, oh my goodness, I totally pulled it off. I have a senior peer who has been traditionally very shy, doesn't like public speaking, but she's an amazing resource when it comes to training. You put her in front of the class, delegating, and that's what we did. We delegated the training to her because that was what she struggled with. But the minute she started to speak, she bloomed and the whole room just lit up. So now she recognizes she has that skill, and she just needs to navigate the first 5 minutes. Once she gets over the first 5 minutes, she's realized, I'm quite the speaker. So I found that that's what it helps to do. And I think it's one of the major resources for person-centered or strength-based feedback, if you like. Not everybody recognizes their strengths, and sometimes delegation can help you bring it to the fore. Thank you.
Wow, the way you worded that was fantastic. I'm upset I didn't put this on that list. That's such a good one because that's, people are often in this field unsure about themselves, right? I can relate to that story 100%. I never thought I would be caught in front of a camera, in front of an audience, which I'm a full-time trainer at this point in my job. And I have a terrible fear of stage fright. And people always tell me, you do so great though, you can never tell. And, I still have to get over that. But you're absolutely right. Like my supervisor delegating these tasks, like one bit at a time, really helped get this out of me. And I didn't even know it existed, right? So, man, that's such a good one. I appreciate you sharing. Thank you for that. And Andrew, go ahead.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Hi. So I would just like to echo what Madupe said, that through delegation, I also have a staff member who initially was very closed off and prone to overwhelm. But through, careful delegation and encouragement, they've started to blossom.
I love that. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, so just enhancing and helping your staff grow. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that and just echoing it, right? I think emphasizing it is really important so we can see that this does work, right? Like delegation, it works for people, it helps managers, it helps staff members, right? So man, you all know the benefits behind it, more than just what's here. But just to add, it helps utilize all of our resources, including people, right? All of the resources available to a team while welcoming staff in their skills, as you all said, welcoming their expertise, and essentially just maximizing that efficiency, right? It's a super valuable tool for achieving organizational goals and driving success for your team. I see AK said also support needs to be stressed and given. Yes, 100%. Support is such a big deal. When it comes to delegation, it's very stressful to be given a task without support. I mean, yeah, I mean, sometimes it happens still, right? Like I've experienced that definitely in my role when my supervisor has delegated tasks to me, and I'm certain I've made that mistake with my team before. And so I think it's important to really highlight, like, support your team. How do you support them though? You know, like, ask them what kind of support they need to you know, achieve the goals that you both have in mind, right? Thank you all for sharing. Those are really great examples. Okay, so I want to kind of look at the reluctance behind some people, you know, who are kind of apprehensive to delegate, right? Like, why do people not delegate? And you know, I'm curious to know if any of you identify with these. I certainly do, and you know, I definitely need to always, you know, read this list to make sure I'm not doing this anymore. But you know, there's always some reluctance to delegate from some people. And this is especially true for new managers. I would say it was way more true whenever I was a new manager. So some of those reasons behind that reluctance would be things like, you think it would be quicker if you did the task by yourself. That's such a big one. Oh my gosh, I can't even tell you. I've done that many times. I always thought I would just, you know, complete the task much faster. Maybe you don't want to give up control. Maybe you don't want to give up knowledge. You enjoy doing certain projects and you prefer not to reassign them. Believe it or not, I have actually done this too. I enjoy doing this specific assignment and want to keep it. And yeah, that's it can be overwhelming, right? And also doesn't help my staff grow in that sense. You feel guilty about adding more work to a colleague's to-do list, or asking someone else to do the quote unquote dirty work. Man, that's very true. You lack confidence or trust in others to do the work, believing you're the only one who can do the job right. I've heard this one many times, y'all. And then a few more reasons would be you avoid harder tasks that need to be done. These are a bit more complex reasons, but also very equally true. You avoid harder tasks that need to be done. Doing tasks that can be delegated allows the supervisor to feel that they didn't have time to do their own more difficult job. Staff members have previously made it difficult to give them tasks as they claim they're unable to do the task without the supervisor overseeing every aspect of it. So needing to essentially be, you know, getting direct support the whole time they're doing the task. And staff have previously tried to reverse delegate tasks given to them, making it the supervisor's job to get the task done. That has also happened to me before. So whatever the reason, it is important to continue practicing delegation, right? So getting past that reluctance and getting past these, you know, these reasons that many of us probably experience, you know. I see someone mentioned in the chat too, acceptance in the new role, being told you're not the old supervisor. New role, new rules can be a challenge with employees. And yeah, that's a really good one. Emily added, for me, it's a combo of it's quicker to do myself when it often actually isn't. I get that. And feeling like I'm giving people quote unquote busy work when I know their skill level is higher than that task. Oh, wow, that's a really good one, Emily. Especially when being mindful of peer drift. Oh, yeah, we talk about peer drift in our next presentation. So, yeah, that's 100%. That's a really good one, actually. When you know that their skill level is higher, and that they're more capable of doing more work than that. I've experienced that as well. I'm curious to know, have any of you experienced any of these yourself? Maybe any others that aren't on this list, like Emily and AK had mentioned in the chat. And you know, if you have done any of these or identify with these, I'm curious to know what happened as a result. Like, what happened when you were reluctant in that way? And does anyone want to share like an example of that? Andrew, yeah, go ahead.
Hi. So I've had it where a couple of reasons I'm nervous to jeopardize the rapport I've had with staff before being taking on a different role in leadership, as well as I want to shield the people I that I supervise from potential overwhelm and burnout, and I tend to take that on myself, which wouldn't do anyone any favors, I'm realizing.
Yeah. And can I ask you, Andrew, in what way is it like not, would it not be helping? Like what was the result of that?
Well, what it wouldn't be helping is that it can create tension. Because maybe I could have been a bit not myself, less chatty, less I don't want to say less friendly, but there's definitely a shift in my interactions with my staff.
Totally.
So that's not something I would like to see. I try to foster a friendly and warm work environment so everyone feels comfortable while they're doing what needs to be done.
Yeah, so like that can 100% strain those relationships. Yeah, that's a great example. Yeah, I love that you're very aware of that. That's really great. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. 𝗣𝗿𝗀𝘀𝗀𝗶𝗍, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Two things I wanted to bring to the fore. When you leave a level and become a leader, I mean, there's only one position for leadership. Somebody must take it. While I understand that it can strain the relationship because you were at the same level once upon a time, leadership is not a popularity contest. It's about responsibility and ability to deliver on those responsibilities. I've said that to ask this question. Delegating a task, the person has not necessarily asked for that responsibility. Sometimes that person may feel unable to push back and say, no, I don't want this responsibility or whatever, for whatever reason. Where they don't, or where that doesn't happen, and the task fails, should there be a sanction, particularly when the failure of that delegated task has significant or more than average repercussions? And to what degree should the sanctions apply, given the difference in capacity levels that we all have, whether peer or not? And I'm cautious about saying that because I also know that being a peer is not a crutch, So that was my comment question.
Yeah, I think you're getting some love in the chat, 𝗣𝗿𝗀𝘀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗍. AK said some employees may not like or wanting to take on the new roles, or roles to be part of the team, preferring the old laid back ways instead of moving forward to better goals and focus. John felt like that was a great question. Andrew said, thank you for your insight, 𝗣𝗍𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗍. So yeah, can I ask 𝗣𝗍𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, can you reframe that question? Can you reframe it for me so that go ahead.
So okay, I'm going to put my picture up. Okay, so what I'm referring to is this. You get transition to leadership from your peer group, right? Leadership is not about popularity. I may have been well liked as a colleague, but when I become a leader, there's certain conversations that I'm excluded from and certain conversations that I'm mandated to have. That being said, that leadership position comes with its responsibilities. Those responsibilities are part of what I'm delegating to my colleagues. Well, they're still my colleagues, but I'm supervising them now. Not everybody that is delegated a task asked for it. And not everybody that even asks for it is able to fulfill it. But a failed task has implications. Some of those implications may carry sanctions. Given the nature of what I've explained, should those sanctions apply? And I said that advisedly because I don't believe that being a peer is a crutch. It doesn't mean I'm deficient in any way, manner, or form. And so if in so-called a regular framework, so-called, a delegated task or a failed assignment draws certain sanctions, to what degree should that apply in this scenario?
Man, that really is a good question. You know, I'm not sure if there's a one single answer to that question. I think ultimately, you know, as you said, like being a peer is not a crutch, right? And what I find important in this field is many people have experienced a lot of everyone has lived experience, right? Everybody has some sort of trauma or history, and we're a sensitive group of people. We're sensitive folks, you know, and I think that that's okay. I think I have found it to be, you know, really helpful for my supervisor or me as a supervisor to really just explain those expectations, right? And explain what, you know, what we're going to do if this isn't achieved, right? I think, you know, there's not many like sanctions within my department. I think what happens is that if a delegated task is failed to be completed, we figure out as a group how to get it done, how to do it, right? And we move forward with that. That's how my team operates. I think it's different for everybody, right? And of course, I think it's important to consider like our audience. What kind of staff are we working with? I'm not even sure if that answers your question. I'm curious to know. Oh, go ahead.
To some degree it does, and I don't want to derail the conversation because I know that there's still a presentation to do here, but as I think about it, and what you said is instructive, that everybody has trauma, everybody has lived experience, is the varying degrees to which we self-identify based on our trauma as peers or covert peers, because there's, I like to think of it as, yeah, everybody is kind of, nobody tells you, unless they have to, that I have a stomach ache. Everybody has varying degrees of digestive challenges. It's the person that screams and says, I have a stomach ache. So we're the ones that have said, I have a stomach ache, and we're dealing with it. But other people are walking around with their belly aches. Now, as we transition from addressing the pure channel of being peer and the unidentified peer, I see more of a world where those two are beginning to meet increasingly, where people are self-identifying more, even in the so-called traditional work setting, and how our skills can be brought to bear in those traditional settings to help make the process of self-identification easier and to support them in their journey of recovery when they identify. So part of it is in being able to be on task, regardless of whatever my recovery journey is looking like. I can do a task from start to finish. I can be held accountable. I am productive and I'm contributing to the bottom line. That's what the traditional line understands. So what I'm saying is, how do we get closer to that?
Such a delicate balance. Such a great question. Again, I just don't, I don't know if anyone else wants to touch on this, but you raise such a good question because, and I feel it's such a common conversation within the peer workforce, right? Like it's always this balance, right? Just as becoming a supervisor, how do you balance being a peer to your people while being a leader, yeah, I do think I envision this cohesion, the way that you described as well. And I think doing what has helped me in my opinion, being on task and getting this done and knowing those things about myself. I didn't know those things about myself until I was challenged to do those things. So like when my supervisor was like, this is your task, this is what I expect, you're gonna, this is what I want you to do, and kind of just had this expectation that I would do it, and it was just placed in front of me. I was able to do it. Now, that doesn't mean everybody's going to be able to do it, and I think that helps us as supervisors figure out who's capable of what, who might need more of my attention, who may not. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting topic, and man, that's a really great question. I want to get to Aisha. I didn't know if Aisha wanted to add something to that. Did you want to mention something?
Yeah, well, one of the things that I wanted to do, there was a question that you asked, but I think I forgot what it was. Oh, I wanted to talk about the reluctance to delegate and how when I first became a supervisor many years ago, I moved from working in this environment with a lot of people that were my friends and then moving into a role of their supervisor. I was very reluctant to delegate things with them because now I was on the outside of the clique, so to speak. It's like my role has changed. Now I have to set boundaries. I can't have, there's certain type of situations and conversations, and there's a certain way that I need to govern myself. And so I think very early on, I was reluctant to start delegating. So when I was transitioning, I sort of took it kind of easy, just did a lot of observing. Plus, there were a lot of things that I already knew because I was a staff member. And I really just sort of eased my way into it to give people time to transition. But to the other question that my peer was just statement that was just made, I think what I wanted to say is that I think that the way that we make balance is really by meeting people where they are. I think for me, I've been working as in a role as a peer specialist now for about 15 years, and I've been really mindful of sort of like ruling people with an iron fist because that's not what I want from my peers. Like what I want is that everything is us. It's not a them and us, it's us. And so if my team fails, then I fail. And my role as their supervisor is to really lead by example with patience and kindness and support, and also to really understand the strengths and weaknesses of each staff member. Like there's some staff that's really strong at facilitating groups. There's other staff that are sort of quiet but really good at administrative tasks and so forth. And so I try not to ever, you know, it's not about because it's really not about me. It's not about me exercising my power or ruling people with an iron fist. It really is about us growing and learning together collectively as a team. And so that was my response to the question about how do we make the balance? We make the balance by really meeting people where they are and not putting expectations on people that may or may not be realistic because each person is different. And so really looking at the strengths and what some may call weaknesses or just the strengths, of some people. I always come from a strength-based perspective because we all have them. They're just all different. And so I really work hard to explore that with the person and to draw that out of the person and lift that up. And then people begin to thrive from that.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I love both things. I appreciate you, kind of responding to 𝗣𝗿𝗲𝘀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗍𝗍's great point, right? Like, that's a really great response. I feel, and just to, really echo that, like, Cher really believes in meeting people where they're at. And so I think that's what I was trying to say earlier, is that I have found that to really work in conjunction, though, like, because 𝗣𝗍𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 brought up a point of like being able to be on task and do these things in the traditional work setting way that is still important as a supervisor and as an organization. And, I have found like conferences like these and trainings and workshops, like within the workforce, like, like we're talking about delegation today, specifically in this workforce, though. We're not just talking about delegation in the corporate world, right? Like, and having those conversations is, I think, where we can grow, and at the same time be mindful that, we're in the peer workforce, and so we do need to meet people where they're at. What a beautiful share. I admire your leadership. That's really great. And you're getting some love in the chat too. Emily says, I so understand that. It's tough as a peer supervising peers because there's that hierarchy, balancing I'm your peer in some aspects, but I'm your boss is a struggle, right? That word balance, y'all. It's the balance word. It's so true, right? And I want to share this really quick because it relates very much to what Aisha just shared. So this was a quote directly from a manager that I spoke with, who said, I was made a supervisor with very little experience and preparatory training, so I faced many challenges from the get-go. I had difficulty setting boundaries with my staff because I was accustomed to treating them as peers. Naturally, this impacted my ability to effectively supervise and delegate tasks to them. I also found reprimanding staff difficult when their performance fell short, fearing they wouldn't respect the new hierarchy of our relationship. I was reluctant to delegate work to them and resolved to just do it all myself, which led to burnout. When I asked my supervisors for guidance, they recommended nonprofitready.org as a good source of info. This greatly benefited my supervision skills. So this person also mentioned some other things that their supervisor did, and which we'll touch on in a couple slides. But I wanted to really highlight this because if you haven't heard of nonprofitready.org, it's a free website that gives you and staff free trainings, along with they'll kind of do like little quizzes along the way. But it's been really helpful for me. I used it when I first became a supervisor, and they have videos and workshops on delegating and being a new manager too. And just being in the nonprofit world. So if you aren't familiar with that, I totally recommend checking it out for you or your staff. I think I thought that this was a really great example because it just highlights everything we're talking about, right? It was the perfect example of like what Aisha just said, and what we've talked about from the beginning of this presentation. So okay, so I appreciate y'all sharing and your input and insight. So these are just some things we want to consider, right? So we're kind of moving into what we can do to combat and prevent the kind of supervision that is going to damage relationships with staff and create a poor work environment, and overwhelm a supervisor, right? Like those are things we want to avoid. So what to consider when delegating: each team member's current workload, 100%. the time each team member has to spare on additional assignments, which assignments are higher or lower priorities, resources that might be needed for those assignments, assigning tasks that could develop a team member's skill set. You know, many of you mentioned this already. Which team member is most appropriate for the assignment? And most importantly, don't just hand a task off to your team without context and without resources needed to get the job done. Of course, unless their level of autonomy is pretty high, but even then, right, you still want to help set your team up for success. And of course, these are definitely important to consider. And I think that the running theme of these is that it requires, you know, follow-ups, communication, meetings with your team. It just requires constant communication so that you're all kind of kept in the loop and you know what's going on, right? And you know if your team's overwhelmed or not, right? Maybe two people need to do a task because both of them have too much on their plate. And I can't tell you how important it is to consider your staff member's stress level. Because when you don't, then it builds resentments, right? There's so many things that could come with that. And so, you know, you want to care for them and be compassionate and a kind supervisor who takes into consideration what your staff is, you know, feeling at work at that moment. So these are just some suggested steps. I also got this from my coach. This is just like a quick, easy, like make sure you check all these boxes. Granted, each step is much more complex, but this is just kind of the simple step-by-step instructions of how to effectively delegate. And following this recipe will kind of help you not miss a beat, but you want to define the task, you want to state the objective, you want to determine resources that are needed, you want to determine deadlines and make those deadlines clear. You want to determine what staff members need to be involved. Do all of them need to? Does one need to go to another for a certain item to complete that task? You want to support and communicate, right? Which is, you know, what we just talked about. And of course, provide feedback on results. So I'm running a little low on time, y'all. I don't think I'm going to get to my role play, but I mean, it's pretty quick. I don't know. I guess we could do it. Okay, so this is essentially don't ever delegate a task this way. Larry,
Yes.
I need you to get this assignment done. I need it by tomorrow.
Okay. But you didn't give me, I don't have the spreadsheet. And I'm working on the supplies for the thing, and they're due tomorrow too.
I don't care. Just get it done and I'll come get it tomorrow.
But, okay.
Okay, I'm not an A-list actor, y'all, so, you know, bear with my videos. So, you know, from this clip, what's happening here is, you know, there's poor communication from the supervisor. The staff member doesn't have the resources needed to accomplish a task. The staff member has another task with the deadline as well, right? And the supervisor didn't clarify which task was a higher priority. It was kind of just like, you know, not sensitive to the situation and not paying attention to, you know, what's really happening. Yeah, it's a great example, precisely how not to go about it, says John. Okay. Okay, so I want to show you really quick. We got a few more, but they're pretty quick. So this is what happens the next day after what not to do. All right, Larry, where's that assignment?
I didn't get it done
What happened?
because I was working on the supply sheet, and I told you I needed the Excel sheet, and you didn't give it to me.
Oh, okay. What was the outcome? Task wasn't completed by its deadline. Staff didn't even gain any skills, right? Multitasking, no time management. Maybe they didn't practice with Excel if they needed it. The supervisor feels a lack of reliability from the staff, and the staff member feels a lack of support from their supervisor. So definitely, you know, this is how this can really negatively impact those relationships and what's happening on your team. So what can we do instead? Managers can offer support through answering questions, listening, using clear and concise communication, determine the resources needed, ensure that the team members have access to them, brainstorm with your team how to manage time for assignments together, prioritize those tasks together, make the higher priorities known so that both of you can kind of figure out, like, how can you do this, right? Include other staff members who potentially have time and can help, and offer a time to check in about the task. So I want to show you what happens in this clip.
Hey Larry,
Hey Jess, what's up?
I need you to get this assignment done, and I need it done by tomorrow, okay?
Okay, but I don't have access to the spreadsheet.
Oh, to this Excel spreadsheet to get this
No, I
data?
don't.
Okay, so I'm gonna email it to you right now then, okay?
Okay.
So that way you have what you need. So I think that's all you'll need for it too, and then you can get all these numbers done.
Yeah, and just so you know, I'm also working on the supply list, and it's due tomorrow too. So how do I do that?
Well, how about when Belle comes in? I definitely want you to get this done first. This is an absolute priority. So do this first.
Okay.
And then when Belle comes in, ask her for a little bit of support to get the supply list done.
Got you.
If y'all aren't able to get it done, what supplies do we absolutely need this week?
Definitely toilet paper. Because we
Okay.
just got an email last night.
Okay, so then what we'll do, if you and Belle aren't able to get the supply list done, then what we can do is I'll email Nicole from downtown and see if maybe they have any extra toilet paper.
Oh great, we're going there tomorrow.
You're going to downtown tomorrow?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So how about then tomorrow we'll check in. We'll check in about where you are on the supply list. But please get this one done first before the supply list. Is that
And
cool?
yeah,
All
if I
right.
have any questions, I'll just ask you.
Perfect. Yes.
All right.
Thanks, Larry.
Amy. Bye.
All right. So we did some of the things we talked about, right? AK says the supervisor. Yeah, I missed a beat in the role play. Supervisor should have checked in and asked if any questions or concerns to be answered. Yes, that is definitely a good way to end giving a task, right? But there was some brainstorming that happened. We provided a check-in time. And there was clarity, and the supervisor specified which task was the higher priority, of course, and was open to questions about the assignment. So they kind of worked together, right? Which was what we want. So the next day, the assignment was completed and sent to the supervisor on time, and an additional assignment was also completed. So both tasks got done. Let's see. So, oh man, I've only got 5 minutes, y'all. Okay, so I'm gonna have to skip our exercise, but I'll make these slides available later so that you can read that exercise if you want, and just kind of see how, what matters when you decide who to delegate to. So some tools and techniques for empowering peers through delegation. You can set your team up for success by making your expectations clear. You want to provide additional tools and training that might support their greater success, offer guidance and feedback on how they can manage their time between other tasks, encourage them to make independent decisions by granting autonomy to them and decision-making authority. And obviously, don't forget to praise your team for all their hard work and a job well done on the assignments that were delegated to them. You want to be available to provide guidance, advice, and support whenever needed. So creating an open door policy to and encourage peers to ask questions is really helpful. That way they feel comfortable with sharing their concerns, maybe their ideas, without fearing any kind of judgment. And managers should always foster what I've heard to be called sort of an empowerment mindset in the environment, right? You want to foster that among peers, and you can do that by encouraging them to take ownership of their work, encouraging and having them embrace challenges and seize opportunities for growth and their skill development. So essentially, y'all, inspiring confidence and self-belief, right? Someone mentioned it earlier by saying, helping people become self-aware and identify the things that they're capable of. So encouraging them to tap into their potential and face challenges and push themselves if and then be there to support them in that process. So I know we got such limited time, but I would love to just open these last couple minutes to any comments or any questions. If anyone wants to, share anything that they wanted to add.
Thank you. I thought it was very helpful and relevant.
Thanks, John. I'm glad to hear it. 𝗣𝗿𝗲𝘀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗍, go ahead.
There equity in delegation, or should there be equity? Everybody have to get delegated a task, and when you don't pick on somebody to delegate tasks to, do you run the risk of them feeling like the kid that didn't get for the team?
I'm sorry, 𝗣𝗍𝗍𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, you're breaking up a bit.
Oh, I apologize. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Try
Okay.
again.
Yeah, I was saying, is there equity in delegation in general? Must everybody get delegated a task? And how do you balance that off of somebody now feeling that they were like the kid that didn't get picked for a team?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I feel for me on my team, I really measure what people are honestly, I take into consideration what they're dealing with as well, like maybe outside of work, and they're willing to come to work still. Some people have a lot that they've dealt with in life just not related to work at all. And so, I think it depends on what I have seen people be capable of. Like, for example, my supervisor, who delegated many tasks to me and my colleagues, I felt her giving me more work and kind of filling my plate. And when I asked her, I was like, I feel like I'm a lot busier than most people. And she said the reason why is because she felt like I could handle it. And to me, I think that she measured that, and I never asked her, but I think that she made that decision because she had felt genuinely that I could handle that task at that time. But there are other times where I can't handle that much work. And I don't know if that answers your question. I think it really just depends. And to make sure nobody feels kind of like they weren't picked for the team, I definitely, as a supervisor myself, I would always give people a tasks, especially I would always feel out what my staff really loved doing. What did they enjoy? What tasks did they like to do the most? And I almost always could get, them on those tasks, whether they excelled at it or not. I thought if someone didn't really excel at it, this was an opportunity for them to do it better. And then, of course, if they did excel at it, then it gets the job done, right? So I found a benefit to it no matter what, but I always wanted to take into consideration what they really loved doing the most in their job, so that they enjoyed coming to work, and that they enjoyed like the work that they would do, I guess, if that makes sense.
Thank you so much. It's been amazing, Jessica.
Yeah, thank you, 𝗣𝗍𝗍𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, you were awesome. I so appreciate your questions, and your insight is so meaningful. I love it. I appreciate everyone for listening to my delegation presentation.